TV trash. This has been a bad year for me. Color, joy, happiness, I hate them all! Yeah, so I figure this holiday season we need to ditch the craptastic holiday garbage that's found its way onto the small screen in recent years and go back to something more cheerful and appropriate for the holidays. I am not afraid to sit here and admit that I still love the stop-motion Christmas specials made by Arthur Rankin and Jules Bass. There's just a timeless feeling to them that continues to last, perhaps because each one is intentionally set in the past so they can never really get dated. And for me, the best of them all is probably The Year Without a Santa Claus. Originally airing in 1974 and based on a 1956 book by Phyllis McGinley, this special has long been one of the most remembered of the Rankin-Bass works, largely for its creative characters and musical numbers, one in particular that we will definitely get to. And yes, I am well aware of that piece of crap live-action version that was made back in the 2000s. Go watch Cartoon Hero's take on that one. He did as good a job ripping it apart as anyone. No, we're gonna look back at the genuine article and find out if it does in fact still hold up today. This is the Rankin-Bass special, The Year Without a Santa Claus.
It was a year without a Santa Claus, a Christmas Eve so sad. It was a year without a Santa Claus, the worst we've ever had.
So the special opens with our narrator for the show, Mrs. Jessica Claus herself. Her name is Jessica, right? I mean, all of the Rankin-Bass Christmas specials are in continuity with each other, right? Okay, Mrs. Claus in this special is voiced by Shirley Booth when it was Roby Lester in Santa Claus is Coming to Town, but Mickey Rooney voices Santa in both of these, so I don't think it's against all logic to think of this as a sequel to the previous special. At any rate, Mrs. Claus tells us about how there was once a time when Santa almost took Christmas off.
Crick in my back, cold in my nose, aches in my fingers and all 10 toes, and a sort of kind of kink inside whenever I think of that Christmas ride.
Mrs. Claus says she sent for the doctor, and it turns out his bedside manner leaves something to be desired.
Probably never got over the case of near pneumonia you picked up last year gallivanting around the world in your open sleigh. And for what? Just to deliver presents to a bunch of folks who don't give a hoot in the first place.
Huh, sounds like someone was on the naughty list more than a few times as a kid.
If Santa stayed home, why, there'd be no Christmas.
Who cares? Nobody cares about Christmas anymore.
They don't?
Of course not. Wouldn't surprise me none if nobody even believes in you anymore.
Now I'm off to go visit my distant cousin. Lives on a mountaintop just outside of Whoville.
No, Ma, the man's right. I had that same feeling myself, but I just wouldn't admit it. Nobody really cares anymore.
So word quickly spreads that Santa Claus won't be coming to town this year. That fast in an age before the internet. That's impressive. Man, too bad Angry Santa Elf wasn't on Twitter back then. The big guy says he's not gonna do it this year. So we just made all these bootleg Xbox Ones for nothing. Meanwhile, Mrs. Claus enlists the aid of the top 2 elves in the workshop, Jingle and Jangle Bells, as she looks to find a way to keep Christmas going.
Anyone can be Santa. Why can't a lady like me? I admit I'm underfed, but with a pillow from the bed, I could be Santa Claus.
See, now this is forward progressive thinking. Mrs. Claus isn't sitting back and complaining that misogyny is holding her back from becoming Santa. She's going out and trying to do it herself. Well, until it's determined she can't pass off the disguise. But hey, who knows? Maybe someday, some female out there will be inspired to take the helm as the savior of Christmas. Well, there goes my appetite for Christmas cookies. Her next plan is for Jingle and Jangle to go down to Earth and search for any traces of Christmas spirit that remain from last year that will change Santa's mind about no one caring, sending them out with the reindeer Vixen, who is apparently a baby reindeer in this movie. You'd think there'd be an age requirement to pull the sleigh, but I guess she passes because she's in the back of the line. But it turns out there's a side effect to being married to someone for many centuries. They usually know when you're scheming.
Do I look like I'm up to something?
No, you don't look like you're up to something, but whenever you look like you're not up to anything, you're up to something.
Lady, when the guy knows when every kid in the world has been bad or good, I'm pretty sure he knows when you've been.
You mean they went down there out into that cruel world by themselves? No telling what might happen. Now I'll have to go after them. Why, those three won't even get past the Miser brothers without...
The Miser brothers? Oh, dear. Oh, I forgot all about those two.
As Santa summons his best reindeer, Dasher, to go chasing after the elves, we're first introduced to the Miser brothers, who are like the meteorological version of the Civil War. Snow Miser always keeping the North cold, while the Heat Miser constantly kept the South as hot as the nostalgia critic's temper.
Don't let them get through! Singe their britches for them! Get them! Get them! Get them! They got away! They got away!
See, he's not really trying to stop these three from spreading Christmas cheer. He's just upset that they interrupted the Miser's war games. They eventually land in Southtown, USA, which I think was founded about a year after Cityville was.
What do you call that thing anyway?
That's Vixen.
Riding a vixen the wrong way on a one-way street, crossing the white line, and wearing funny-looking suits on a Sunday.
Hey, they got off easy here. If it was today, they'd be accused of being illegal immigrants, the Tea Party would get involved, and the next thing you know, this story is gonna make us wish for 8 crazy nights. So they figure they need to disguise Vixen as a dog, and eventually their search for good cheer leads them to the kids of Southtown, where we're introduced to Iggy Thistlewhite.
You mean you don't care if Santa Claus comes or not? None of you?
Of course not. It's none of our business. Besides, believing in Santa Claus is for little kids.
20 years later, this kid will be going to his old high school's games, desperately trying to reclaim his squandered youth. Not that I would know anything about that.
The dog catcher's got your pooch.
Stop, thief!
Reindeer napper.
You come back here!
You said you could say
Vixen, hang on, hang on!
It's at this point that we do in fact see that even with the supposed lack of belief in Santa, this story does take place in a past, simpler time, as even though there are clearly motor vehicles, things are still simple enough for the cops to be on bicycles. And it's a time where when you see your kid with a strange old man he just met, of course your first instinct is to invite him into dinner, which is what happens when Iggy meets Santa. And it's here that both Santa and Iggy's parents try to revive some Christmas spirit in him with one song that does seem to get lost in the soundtrack, but is still pretty touching.
I believe in Santa Claus, but there was a time I thought I had grown too old for such a childish rhyme. He became a dream to me till one Christmas night someone stood beside my bed with a beard of white.
See, nowadays they couldn't put something like that in a Christmas special without making some bad Chris Hansen reference.
They were what?
He was taking their dog away in his truck, and they were trying to catch him.
Their dog. Good grief. Vixen.
The Santa pretty much gives himself away by flying away to find Vixen in time, which leads Iggy to deduce that the other two were elves whose dog was a reindeer. Iggy ends up meeting the elves again at the mayor's office, which is where they have to go to try and get Vixen sprung, but yeah, he has a bit of trouble believing them.
Now, let me see. If I got this straight. You two are elves, and that dog down at the pound is a reindeer, and you want to take him back to Santa Claus.
It seems one of the reasons there isn't a ton of Christmas cheer in Southtown is because it hasn't snowed there in more than 100 years. So this town is definitely in Florida, which means this whole scenario should just be par for the course for them. Elves pledge Mayor to make the dog catcher let their reindeer go. Yeah, that sounds like something that would make Nash's show. Basically, a deal is made. The mayor says he'll believe them and let Vixen go if they can make it snow for their town. And once they agree to the deal, the mayor immediately starts using it for his next election campaign. In song.
It's gonna snow, ho, ho, right here in Dixie. All will be white, overnight it will be cold. On Christmas Day, hey, hey, right here in Dixie. We'll do-si-do in the snow, so I've been told.
Oh, by the way, everything the elves are about to do ultimately becomes unnecessary to their objective because Santa bails Vixen out himself. So does that mean their entire mission is... Well, yes and no, as we'll see. The elves determine that Mrs. Claus is perhaps the best person to get them out of this dilemma. Of course, all of this really happened because sending those two down to Earth was her idea, so yeah, I guess she should be the one to clean up her own mess. Sure enough, Mrs. Claus shows up on Blitzen. Yeah, they couldn't get Rudolph for this adventure. Ever since he saved Christmas and the New Year together, he kinda went all diva on everyone. Now you have to go through his agent to get him to do anything. At any rate, she figures the best course of action is to see Snow Miser. Which, of course, brings us to what you've all been waiting for. The one part of the whole special that everyone really loves it for. Hit it!
I'm Mr. White Christmas. I'm Mr. Snow. I'm Mr. Icicle. I'm Mr. Ten Below. Friends call me Snow Miser. Whatever I touch turns to snow in my clutch. I'm too much.
Still a better number than Do They Know It's Christmas or the Christmas Shoes.
No can do, Mrs. C. The South is under the control of my stepbrother, Heat Miser. And every time I try to send a little refreshing snow down there, what does he do? He turns it into rain, or fog.
I've been working on this thing called a polar vortex to thwart him, but it's gonna be a long time before it's ready for beta testing even. Naturally, Mrs. Claus's next plan is to go and try and convince Heat Miser to be lenient, and yeah, he's not exactly the easiest guy to talk to.
Well, then he's grossly unfair, that's what. Traipsing around in that stupid sleigh of his, stirring up cold winter breezes and causing everybody to think fondly of snowball fights and sleigh rides and ice hockey.
Sounds like this guy could be on Dallas Sports Radio. The only way Heat Miser will allow it to snow in the South is if Snow Miser allows him to make it warm at the North Pole for a day.
Hi there, Sugar Plum. How'd you make out with a hothead?
I heard that, you snowball.
Oh, my goodness. Speak of the devil.
I told you he wouldn't cooperate.
Cooperate? Surrender the North Pole you call cooperate? A good mind to chill your embers for you.
Oh, yeah?
Really, I don't want to see what happens when these guys play Halo or Cards Against Humanity against one another.
I hate to do this to you boys, but you leave me no choice. I'm going over your heads.
You're kidding.
We're gonna see none other than Mother Nature.
We must set a good example for the people down there to follow. So, boys, police!
I won't do it!
Me neither.
Stop it! Stop it!
Yes, Mother dear.
Wow, and I thought Piper Halliwell had a bad temper when she was given the powers of nature. So the snow falls in Southtown, and this apparently causes enough goodwill to spread over the entire world to have them officially declare a holiday for Santa, with kids making and delivering presents to him instead of vice versa. And it's here that one thing happens in the climax that I will admit always kinda perturbed me. Santa gets a letter from this little girl telling him how much Christmas will be sad for her if he doesn't show up, played along to this cover of Elvis Presley's Blue Christmas. Look, I get what they're going for here, trying to further show Santa that the kids really do look forward to seeing him, but it does kind of send a mixed message that with all the goodwill everyone else gives to him, it's ultimately one letter from someone that frankly is still thinking of herself that finally gets him to change his mind. But still, everything ultimately works out.
As everybody standing around, there's work to be done. Load up the sleigh, harness the team, fetch my coat.
But what about your gout?
And the crick in your spine.
And your aches?
Oh, my back feels fine.
So now the Christmas ride is back on! Yippee! We gotta load 4 billion presents in less than an hour! So Santa does indeed ride that Christmas night, with Southtown having been so infused with Christmas spirit that they even changed the street names for this one night, which proved to give Santa absolute hell in figuring out which addresses to deliver to.
Well, I've heard the old people often say that there never was such a Christmas day. And that's one reason you may believe why children are merry on Christmas Eve.
And that was The Year Without a Santa Claus. It's totally cheesy and I love it. By today's standards, the animation can look corny and cheap, and the story is pretty loaded with saccharine, but at its heart, this show is about more than finding out what Christmas is really about. It's about not giving in to self-doubt and the fear that you aren't wanted anymore by the people who care about you. A message that ultimately everyone is important in the grand scheme of things. And when you look at it, a similar message about every person being important is kind of placed within quite a few of the Rankin Bass Christmas specials. There's a reason shows like these continue to endure after all these years, because they're genuine. You can tell their stories come from the heart, that they're sincere, and they didn't need to rely on the excessive negativity and cynicism that gets forcibly layered on by too many Christmas specials nowadays. Even the most jaded, bitter of us can still be moved by something that ultimately comes off as pure and what is needed more than ever for this type of season. So from all of us at TV Trash to all of you in the reviewerverse or wherever you may be, here's wishing you all the happiest holiday season and all the best in the new year.